After watching this video, you'll know how you can develop a simple chord progression like this. Into multiple ambient layers that give you enough material for creating a full song that can sound like this. And this was actually a full song because I turned the ideas from this video into a 10-minute ambient piece. You're warmly invited to check it out. Link is down below in the description. But this video is about learning. So after watching this video, you'll have a clear strategy on how you can basically turn any plain chord played with a piano into this type of ambient soundscapes. And my name is Jannis. I'm a music producer and I have a background in jazz and composition, which is also why it's going to sound a little bit jazzy. And yeah, let's jump right into it. Let's start with a basic chord progression. And if you have a chord progression already or really know how to build your own chords, you can skip to the next chapter. I quickly want to share with you how you can create a chord progression if you're new to this or if you don't feel so comfortable doing that. And in my case, I was actually creating one chord sound I really like, which is a major 7 chord. And you can build it by creating a root note. Then you skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 notes. So you click the next one. Then you skip 2 notes, add another one, and you again skip 3 notes. And add this one. This is a major 7 chord. Really beautiful sound. And I used a technique called parallel harmony, which means that you use the same chord on different positions. So we actually create 4 bars. We make it a long sustained note. And then we basically move the whole chord to other positions. In my case, it's from C to G. And then we go to B flat or A sharp and to F. Sounds like this. So this is in disregard of any kind of tonality. It's a very fun approach because it sounds super jazzy and complicated, but in the end it's quite simple because you can simply drag the chord to different positions and see how it sounds like. Maybe this also sounds cool. For example. Also nice. So you don't have to overcomplicate this. Just a quick example on how to create chord progressions. Let's go back to our initial one so we can start arranging it for different types of sounds and instruments. So as you could see, I was using some basic Rhodes sound. I actually used the Arturia Stage 73. It's really great for creating this classic Rhodes type sound. However, we're gonna mute it for now and copy this clip to other sounds. So for example, I have a bass, so we're going to copy it to the bass. You can use any kind of bass sound here. And we're also going to copy it to the voice chord preset, which is like a Ableton pack that has some choir voice sounds. I actually like it a lot. And we modify the clip because here we have all the notes that we can use and now we can distribute them. So the bass only plays the bass. So we basically mute all notes except from the lowest one. We start like this, and we also go to the voice chord, and here we basically mute the bass, so the upper 3 notes remain. And actually it doesn't sound bad. I like where this is going. It's a nice foundation. Let's keep the bass as it is because it gives us a solid foundation and root note, and modify the chord pad a little because now we simply use the same structure on different pitches. And for pads, you can always try moving single notes 1 octave higher or lower. So if you hold down Command and down arrow, you move the highest note here to a lower position. And then you see you actually get a closer movement for individual tones. So you don't have the jumpy intervals that it always jumps like in 4th and 5th. You actually make it sound a little tighter. Let's actually see how this, and actually the whole pad we should also put 1 octave higher. And you can simply experiment by putting tones one octave higher, one octave lower, and see how it sounds. For the song I created, I actually ended up with this progression, and this is super intuitive, so you simply have to play around until you like something. I think the top note movement is also really important, because the highest note sounds a bit like a melody, so you need to make sure that you like the movement of the highest part, and this is how it sounds like. It's also fun to play around with the bass notes, because we have 3 notes, which is already a chord inside the pad, and with 3 notes you can actually use different bass notes, creating a different type of chord sound. And I mean, this is a little wild guessing if you're not so familiar with music theory, but for the first chord it would also work to put in an E, for example. I like the C more, but just to show you that there are different notes that work. A, very interesting. So feel free to drag around the bass notes. I mean, if you're working inside a tonality, you can also select it here and only try tones that are part of the tonality. Again, my example is a little outside of a tonality, so it doesn't really help here. However, I ended up using D for the last chord, creating this type of sound. Let's move on to another part. I called it Arpeggio because it's going to play some ongoing pattern that sounds a bit like some arpeggio. You can hear this type of sound a lot in ambient music when it gets a little more melodical. And it's the DX7 of Arturia again, so some FM sound. And you can make this quite playful, because while the harmony keeps going, you basically look for a note that works with all of those 4 chords. This is D. It actually sounds quite nice. And often, not always, but often, you find that with any chord progression, even here if it's like a little outside of a tonality, you find a pattern that has like an octave. Like here I'm playing D. Actually, I'll show you here inside the MIDI grid. So we have... and if you play the 4th and the 5th in the middle, so you have D, G, and A, this is a very typical pattern. And if you manage to find a spot where this fits, it sounds super, super cool. So actually, let's program it. So it would somewhat sound like this. You can also create this kind of structure like root note, 4, 5, and root note again. Or actually, you count the steps in between, like 4 in between, 1 in between, again 4 in between. And you shift it around and see where you actually like the sound. C should also kind of work, but I think it doesn't sound as good as D. Yeah, it doesn't work. You see here, you immediately hear that it doesn't work. Closer, but in the end, D is actually the sweet spot. So in the end, I created some longer loop, and it actually keeps going. Oh. Yeah, like this. By the way, in case you enjoy this video and also feel like supporting this channel, you can quickly hit the like button and be also warmly invited to subscribe, because I regularly post videos about music production. And if you really like the video, be known that there's also like some hype function that makes sure that this video gets shown to some more people. And I also have some free Ableton toolkits. So if you're using Ableton Live and want to have some free sounds, free devices, just head over to my website. Link is down below in the description and you can download it for free. Let's create some more parts. So I muted the arpeggios so we can listen to only the new part in relation to the harmony. I mentioned for the pad already that it's nice to look for semitone movement, or at least close movement between the parts instead of jumping around. And this is what we're going to do now. We'll see if we can find two notes that are only a semitone apart. So it's like, for example, B flat and C. Actually, let's make sure we see those, because we can use it for creating some additional pad or atmosphere. And for trying notes out, just check the chords and maybe try using the chord tones of the first one. You see, we actually have the B on top. So let's actually see if we can play the B for 2 bars and then move the B to another position. It's actually really nice. You could also use E and F. Of course, you can also wild guess here and just try any note, but starting with a chord tone that is part of the first or also the first 2 chords is actually great, because then you simply explore what happens if you go up or down afterwards. And so here I basically have those 2 notes, and I made it a little triller because I wanted to play some sort of vibraphone type part with my Nord drum. So I was looking for a third, and you can either add like a lower third, which would be G, also like a higher third, which would be D. So we actually have the note as the bottom note. Makes the pad a little different because the harmonic movement happens in the lower part, not the higher part. So it sounds like this. And you can see the second interval is actually a major second, so 1 semitone fits in the middle and you have basically C and D. And it's a very close interval, but it can sound really beautiful for chords as some alternative to the more wide sounds that we also have with the pads that are more based on thirds. Maybe you remember that we had the G and the A for the arpeggio part, as this one, and we can also use them again because they are only a major second apart and they sound great in this triller type sound as well. So we basically have the first interval and we only change 1 note for the second part. And that's how it looks like. You see, this pad is more based on the interval of seconds, while the other pad is based on the interval of thirds. And this brings in a great variety. And actually the third pad type is some arpeggio that breaks the tones. And this way they actually work together instead of being in each other's way. So let's bring in the arpeggio as well. Let's copy the melodic tone. So we can look for a melody, and we know already that for the first 2 bars, E and B sound great, and for the second 2 bars, F and C sound great. So we can use this movement. Let's actually check this out. And you see, it sounds pretty cool if you go to the next harmony a little before to anticipate the chord movement. It's like an anticipated note that comes before the one. Sounds really cool. And now we can again use our knowledge from before that we can use G and A as notes that work for basically everything and put them in between and find little melodies with it. And here's what I actually came up with. So here you can see the melody. So we have the E, F, B, C movement and the G and A again as the kind of connecting points for both harmonic worlds. And this is great as a harmonic and tonal foundation because you can do so much with it already, and also in terms of the development. Now for the melody it sounds super cool. I'm gonna go over to the arrangement view now to have some sort of doubling with another instrument. So here with my Vermona Performer I actually recorded the melody just 1 octave lower, and I absolutely love how this sounds together. And they don't even have to be so tight. I feel like the whole song or the whole piece of music benefits a bit from this sloppiness. And it just came to me when I listened to some orchestra concert like some weeks or even months ago, that it can sound so nice to have the melody being played by 2 different instruments with a totally different timbre. And I think this is a very nice combination of sounds, and it gives you some additional layer because you can also do some call and response at some point. Also, you can turn, for example, this Nord drum pad, this vibraphone type part, into more by using something like beat repeat or granulator or any effect that does that kind of stuff. I don't want to get too deep into the technical stuff now for these effects because otherwise the video is going to take forever. I think it's quite long already. So you see I have some part where I simply copied the Nord part, but I put on beat repeat. You can really intuitively set some stuff here because it will immediately create some additional textures this way. Go to gate, so you only have like the new stuff, so it mixes with the stuff you already have, and it sounds like this. Or actually, I'll focus on only those 2 sounds. Some panning, and you add some texture again. And granular effects are amazing as well. So here I have some granulator that I used where I basically inserted the Nord sample. And again, have those little hints of this pattern that, yeah, create this texture. Here, for example, the pad stops and we only have those little hints. And if you collect stuff like this, you have so many options for also later making that arrangement. And there's one final element that I want to share with you, which is some sort of swell. So this is like a synth sound that simply has a long attack. And a lot of reverb. And knowing what tones work for the entire chord progression, you can simply record a few swells and bring them in at a certain point. So for example, you can already imagine that G and A are going to sound really cool here. For example, you can be super free here and it's super performative because the long attack makes it impossible to hit a wrong rhythm here. And the pitch bend is also super fun for those things. Absolutely love this sound. So this is really something you can perform at any experience level. And that's it for this video. I really hope you feel inspired now to turn your own chord progressions into ambient soundscapes. And as I mentioned, this is actually a song that I finished and it's going to be released on Friday. So maybe you watch it later and it will be released already. If you're watching this in real time, you can also make sure to subscribe to my email list, which also means that you can receive a free Ableton toolkit with some of my favorite sounds and devices. But also you'll be notified once the song will actually be out, and I'll also share with my email list subscribers the project file. So of course it has some stuff that you may not be able to open depending on the plugins that miss, but at least you have the MIDI stuff, and maybe you can actually open the plugins if you have the V collection of Arturia and stuff, so you can analyze it also for the arrangement, which is another topic I'm going to speak about next week, because there's an arrangement trick that I want to share with you on how you can basically learn arrangement by your favorite artists and turn your own loops into arrangements in a very systematic way. It's an approach that really worked well for me and that I want to share with you. Once it's online, I'm going to link it here. And also let me know if this actually helped you to develop a full piece, and I'm really interested in hearing it. Just share it down below in the comments. Apart from that, I wish you lots of inspiration with whatever it is that you create and really hope to see you soon again at this channel. Bye.